sustainable and resilient future for all. The date, 13th of August 2024. The time, 4 p.m. Well, a very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us on Joy News and, of course, myjoyonline.com and all our social media platforms, myjoyonline.com. It's all about our next national dialogue, in fact, happening now. We've been having a series of national dialogues, and today we're going to be talking about WASH, water, sanitation, and hygiene, together with climate change and what the impact is. This evening, we're coming to you live from the Nat Hall here in Accra, and it's all about this all-important subject. The theme we've put together for tonight: enhancing climate resilience, safe and sustainable WASH services delivery. Now, over the next 3 hours or so, we're going to deliberate on these matters, engage politicians, engage non-governmental organizations, engage all and sundry who matter in this equation so that we can reaffirm what our stance is on WASH and how its impact can be felt on climate change and what we can do individually to ensure that we are all safe. I'll just share some tidbits before I move on and acknowledge some of our guests. More than 90%, and you can find this on the WaterAid platform, more than 90% of natural disasters are water-related, in case you didn't know. 4 billion people, about half the population of our world, experience extreme water stress. Just a few days ago, we shared a story, I believe it was only yesterday on Joy News, about residents of Edimedim in the Ayenswano district, and they share water with basically the spirits from the other side. A cemetery, very close to their source of water, and it is an open source, not treated in any way. That is what they drink. And their problem is not unique. It is a problem that you can find in many other parts of the country, especially the northern belt of the country. We also know that there could be a 40% shortfall in fresh water by 2030. How are we preparing for all of these? Because if there's no water, you know what happens to all of us? We all, can we say this together? Die. We all die. But none of us here wants to die. And that is why tonight I would like to acknowledge WaterAid, the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area Sanitation and Water Project, CONIWAS, the EPA, the People's Dialogue on Human Settlement, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, UNICEF Ghana, the Embassy of Denmark in Ghana, the NPP, the NDC, the Movement for Change, the Ministry of Local Government, the Ghana Water Company Limited, and all our other invited guests, including you watching us from where you are. We appreciate your company, and hopefully over the course of these next few hours, as we have this confab with our guests, we can arrive at solutions and map the way forward. And as we have the politicians here, as I always do, I'm going to push them in a corner and find out whether they can share with us what exactly they will be doing. I see Dr. Otokuno laughing. But it will be no laughing matter when you're up here. On that note, I would like to welcome all of you, those joining us via your television screens, your phones, whatever gadgets you're using, and those who have been so gracious to share your time with us here this evening. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. Without further ado, and I'm going to try to work on the time so that we can close on time, I'm going to invite forward the Country Director, WaterAid, Erabna Yanyi Akofo. If I murdered your name, please forgive me. She's going to have 3 minutes to share her opening remarks with us.
No, you didn't. You did very well.
Okay.
You did very well.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished representatives of political parties, directors from MDAs, esteemed members of the diplomatic community, colleagues from CSOs and NGOs, WASH sector advocates, ladies and gentlemen, good evening once again. And let me say that I am truly honored to have you here with us today, taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this critical national dialogue on water, sanitation, and hygiene, a critical sector for accelerating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. According to the National Development Planning Commission 2023 SDG Technical Report, achieving the WASH targets will significantly and positively influence or impact 70% of the 169 SDG targets. That is 132 targets out of the 169 targets. If this is the case, then it is only right that we are having this dialogue and asking ourselves what kind of institutional arrangement and systems leadership do we need to ensure robust governance for the WASH sector for sustained progress on our achievement. And I want to also be clear and say that we cannot discuss WASH, or water, sanitation, and hygiene, without addressing climate change. WASH is intertwined with the environment, and the environment is deeply impacted by climate change. I must say that as a country, we have come a long way when it comes to our WASH targets. But also, we must not fail to acknowledge that we have a very long way ahead of us. Let me share some statistics with you. Currently, access to basic sanitation services stands at 41%, while access to safely managed sanitation services is also 13%. Certainly, urban areas outperform rural areas when you look at the overall picture, but the overall picture is still troubling. The proportion of the population practicing open defecation has only marginally decreased from 20% to 17%. That means that nearly 6 million of Ghanaians are practicing open defecation. And lack of access to sanitation services remains the highest contributor to multidimensional poverty among children. So certainly, this is not a time to deprioritize WASH. Today's dialogue isn't just about exchanging ideas, but it is about driving action. The outcomes from the conversation here should and will certainly influence the national institutional arrangement or institutional framework and our approaches to building a climate-resilient WASH economy. And when I speak about climate-resilient WASH, I refer to services and behaviors that continue to deliver benefit or are appropriately restored within a changing climate context, despite the hazard it may bring. Let me also highlight and mention that WaterAid Climate Change and Election Campaign, which is currently ongoing, is a dedicated campaign to keeping the critical or crucial issues of climate change and WASH at the forefront of our December elections. And I urge you today to challenge your preferred candidates. Also watching from home, I urge you to challenge your preferred candidate. Ask them, what are their plans for addressing water security? What are they going to do to ensure sustainable environmental sanitation and access to clean water for all? These questions should guide how you vote. Because from the NDPC report, it says that improved access to sanitation underpins better health by reducing water-related diseases, enhancing education through improved school environments. It fosters economic growth by raising productivity and reducing health-related costs. It also plays a crucial role in reducing population of our coast and marine environment through the reduction of plastic waste. And additionally, harnessing the opportunities within the sanitation value chain could significantly boost the recycling rate and drive industrialization with residual benefits such as job creation and poverty reduction. So access to safe water and sanitation is not just a goal. It is the foundation of development and key enabler of our aspiration. And that is why we believe in a future where our leaders prioritize WASH. I want to say thank you to you once again, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for your commitment to making meaningful progress together when it comes to climate resilient WASH. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Irabna Yanyi Akofo. Of course, she is WaterAid's country director. We shall now take our next set of remarks, and this will be delivered by the project coordinator, Gamma Sanitation and Project, and that is from engineer George Esiedu. Please, let's welcome him. Let's be generous with our clapping.
Thank you very much, and good evening to Ghana and to our cherished participants and guests. I would like to also join the existing protocol and to indicate that the Gamma Sanitation and Water Project is very proud to be associated with today's agenda, WASH and climate change. You realize that the project is named Sanitation and Water. And the ministry, the only ministry that has placed emphasis on WASH as of now, is also named Sanitation and Water. I happen to be one of the people at the time when the ministry was being set up. And then we said, let's call it Sanitation and Water, instead of water and sanitation as we used to know. At that time, we had made significant progress meeting the MDG goals. But what was lacking significantly was the sanitation component. And so we said, let's place some emphasis on this so we can also push alongside the sanitation and the hygiene part. And this is how come we have the ministry named Sanitation and Water. Why am I saying this? As our previous speaker said, Ghana has made significant progress in the WASH sector. Significant in the sense that from 2015, the status was really bad. Much as we still have a long way to go. From 2015 to date, there has been some significant improvement, which means that the effort that is being put in place is somehow yielding results. And what we need to do is to place much more emphasis on the little that we are doing and even to do more. As at now, as he said, we are hovering around, according to the Ghana Statistical Service, 25% of improved sanitation in Ghana from the 15% that we used to know from 2015. Access to water, we are told around 88% thereabout. Improvement in hygiene is somehow something that we can also be saying that it is doing well. And this might have accounted for the fact that Ghana was able to manage the COVID pandemic effectively because of all of these indicators, water access, and then with the onset of the project. This project started in 2015 because of the onset of outbreak of cholera in this country. And the solution was that was due to poor sanitation. And so the project was given birth to with a focus of increasing access. Over the period, we've provided over 70,000 households, serving over 600,000 population with access to improved sanitation facilities. And then about 17,000 low-income population have been provided with access to improved water supply. And so you understand why COVID pandemic was effectively managed and the effect wasn't as in other parts of the world. Improving sanitation or WASH is something that we shouldn't underrate. And so this discussion is something that is timely, and we should all begin to look at what we can do to continue the gains that we have made and even to improve upon it. And so such discussion is timely, and the Gamma project is happy to be associated with it. Climate change. In our efforts to reach everybody by 2030, that is the goal that has been set by SDG. We have challenges with climate change that also threaten our efforts. And looking at the pace that we are going, then it means we have to take a clue as to what management solutions that we can put in place. Whilst we are making progress, we also look at the components that seek to threaten our efforts. And so we cannot continue doing business as it is without placing much emphasis on climate change. And so to achieve a solution which is sustainable, we must also include an integrated solution to our wash management to make sure that at least we build some level of resiliency into our solutions. And I'm sure this discussion will help us achieve that. Thank you for making us part of this program, and I wish all of us a successful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Asiedu. He is Project Coordinator, Gamma Sanitation and Project. In case you're just joining the conversation, we're live on Joy News. It is our latest national dialogue, and this time it is on WASH and climate change. We're also live on Joy 99.7 FM and myjoyonline.com. Just imagine that. Nearly 6 million Ghanaians practicing open defecation. That's about 17% plus of our population. Let that sink in. And all of that has to do with sanitation, water resources, and the impact of climate change. Moving on from here, before we hear from our political parties, and we have 3 strong ones in the building who are going to speak to us, and I'm going to be particularly interested in what the NDC is going to say, especially because in recent times, we heard something from their flag bearer that got some of us worried. We shall hear from them and see how they explain away and what their thoughts are on this matter. But let me once more quickly acknowledge WaterAid and the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area Sanitation and Water Project, CONIWAS, the EPA, People's Dialogue on Human Settlement, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, UNICEF Ghana, the Embassy of Denmark in Ghana, the MPP, the NDC, the Movement for Change, the Ministry of Local Government, the Ghana Water Company Limited, and of course, all others. I see my good friend from the Ghana Water Company Limited here present. Ghana, we've got to the point where we are now going to hear from the political parties. They've started coming through with their manifestos bit by bit. We've got the Youth Manifesto of the National Democratic Congress. But what does their party, or these parties, what do they say when it comes to WASH, our resilience in challenging or tackling climate change? We're going to hear, first of all, fittingly, from the representative of the New Patriotic Party, the ruling administration. And that presentation, please, those who are going to deliver, I'm going to be strict with the time. 10 minutes. Let's try and stick to the 10 minutes. And when I prompt you, please, for the sake of time. Representing the New Patriotic Party, he's a member of the Manifesto Committee and a climate scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome the Honorable Dr. Henry Kwabena Kokofu. Please, let's put our hands together for him. Let's keep clapping. Let's keep clapping.
Thank you. Good evening, participants. Good evening, the entire nation Ghana. I'm happy to be here and feel more fortified because I have my senior colleague here with me. I must say that the manifesto of the new Patriotic Party is yet to be outdoored or launched, and it comes off Sunday coming in Takrady. So I'm unable to, as it were, deal with what's in the manifesto in the environmental sector. However, once New Patriotic Party is in government, and we do know our way forward, and having known my flag bearer all these years, there are a few things that I can share with you. First of all, I want us to look at what we call 10 triple threat wash crisis countries. These 10 countries, Ghana is not among. Ghana has passed that stage. So it tells you how far you've been able to come. You're talking about Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Benin, Niger, and all that. They are 10 in number. And Ghana is out of that bracket. Again, Ghana having to deal with WASH under previous governments and particularly under this government. We've been able to strengthen systems through evidence-based policy strategy and guidelines. 2, institutional capacity building to implement policies and strategies and monitoring progress, modeling innovative service delivery approaches, and supporting their scale-up. The integration of WASH in health facilities, using WASH as key support for infection prevention control, that's IPC. It has helped to improve maternal and child health outcomes, and similar approaches being adopted in schools. Sustainable infrastructure in at least 100 health facilities and 100 schools are earmarked to be done within 3 years. Climate change, as it affects WASH, has to do with water in several parts of Ghana, especially in the north. And in this regard, a study is underway to map out all the risks faced WASH infrastructure and services, the findings of which is going to help develop the operational guidelines and minimum standards for climate and shock resilient WASH solutions. There are a host of them. For time, I will jump onto, there have been efforts, sustainable efforts to end open defecation and accelerating progress in safely managed sanitation. And here, I must say, defecation-free action plan, the safely managed sanitation strategy, modeling these strategies in 3 to 5 MMDAs, reaching out to at least 100,000 people is very much underway. And all these things are being supported by our development partners, including the World Bank, the UN, and all that, partnering with the government of Ghana. Now, I am aware that a review paper on climate change and water security solutions that was published by Resource Center Network of Ghana, February 2022, participants and stakeholders made some few points, and notably among them was design and implement social behavior change activities on climate change in communities to empower community members with relevant knowledge on climate adaptation and mitigation measures. Again, they came up with a key finding that they should influence political parties to understand WASH and climate linkages and design political manifestos to address these crises. And I think it's in order. That is why we are here, just to get us to understand, which I can assure you, and from what our technical man just said, we are in it, and Ghana is making progress, except that we need to accelerate and then sustain the gains. Having said all these things, it's important to tease out some of the things that the next government, inshallah, which will be headed by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has in place to ensure that the gains that we are making or we've made so far will not be derailed but be sustained. There is a need to increase public spending on sustainable wash delivery. And how do you do that, given the constraints in the public purse? There is an opportunity to reduce economic impact on poor sanitation. Ghana loses $290 million annually. That is $12 per person per year, representing 1.6% of GDP. So if you're able to improve upon sanitation, you're going to save most of this amount or these monies. And drastically, we need to reduce 16 million Ghanaians who use shared lavatories. 4.8 million have no lavatories at all and defecate in the open. We've just been told. And open defecation costs $79 per year by eliminating practice. Whilst eliminating the practice, will require less than 1 million latrines to be built and used. And that is why the ongoing one household, one toilet has been enforced and being reinforced. I remember the Vice President commissioning these household toilets and public toilets. People were laughing at him and they were making jokes of that. Little did they know that he really understands wash and want to get it right. Also, leveraging on private capital and expertise in this sector for to invest in this climate smart investment. For example, there is a renowned Australian engineer, Professor Dr. Vishikari, who has designed projects that provides potable water for rural communities and all that. And he's in talks with the Office of the Vice President to undertake 500 of such projects in 500 villages. And these are also targeting carbon footprints, which can yield carbon credits, and it will be beneficial to the country. There's a need to ensure private investments in wash services by providing incentives and benefits. And so this can be done by encouraging public-private partnership in climate-smart investments, taking advantage of the PPP Act 1039 of 2020 that encourages private to partner public in these ventures. There's also the need to pursue with diligence climate financing mechanisms and instruments through the launching and implementation of the Climate Prosperity Plan. That has also been developed by this government and will soon be launched for Ghana to take off. Finally, integrating the digitalization and innovation in the environmental protection sector. This will help to eliminate both private and the wastage in both private and public funds, and it will help to fight corruption. To also ensure efficient, effective, and prompt delivery of services in the public sector. Strengthening institutions like regulatory bodies such as EPA, the boss is here, MMDAs, Minerals Commission, alongside traditional authorities like the academia, the civil society organizations, the media, and the various youth groups and associations. Further strengthen the relationship with development partners and other non-state actors like the World Bank have said, UNDP, our colleagues from the embassy, Denmark, which I have personal experience that they are working hard, Tema West wastewater management project. We also seek to embark on a major national behavioral change targeting school children, youth, and of course adults to understand, appreciate, and contribute to the success of WASH. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kokofu, for sticking to time as much as possible. Let's applaud him. He did well with time. Up next, we have the representative of the National Democratic Congress in the person of the Director, Interparty and Civil Society Relations, Dr. Peter Braimah Otokono. Please, let's welcome him. Let's keep clapping as he gets here. Ten minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin Akakpo. I will try as much as possible to keep to your 10 minutes. But I thought you said you were going to keep us in the corner. Keeping you in the corner for only 10 minutes is too short. Anyway, so let me stand on all the existing protocols earlier established and bring you warm greetings from His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, the incoming president and the flag bearer of the NDC. He is currently in the Volta region on the campaign tour, and the running mate is also on the field on the campaign tour. And so they extend their greetings. Let me also use this opportunity to commend Joy FM or Joy News and Water Aid and their partners from the Ghana Water and Sanitation Project for putting together this commendable engagement. It is long overdue, and its importance cannot be overemphasized. As a nation, we have come very far, and our challenges, as many as they may be, water, sanitation, and hygiene shouldn't be part of them. But incidentally, we are still here, still trying to grapple with how to handle issues of WASH. Indeed, there have been many statistics that has been shared, some of which rather very confusing, and so some of us, we are not able to digest and understand what those statistics mean. And it is important that as we do such discussions and we plan, particularly in public policy formulation, we really understand what the numbers mean. And so I have heard and read that about 80% or 88% of Ghanaians are those that have access to basic sanitation services. But we should also bear in mind that when we are talking about access to basic services in sanitation, we are not talking only about water. We are talking about several other things, including waste management. And so the understanding and the breakdown helps us to formulate policies properly. And so I would want to attempt to do some further breakdown so that we see the nature of the discussion or the nature of the situation we find ourselves in. Indeed, access to water, which is very key and fundamental. Maslow's, as we studied in the Maslow's theory, says that there are three basic needs of man. So there is food, then there's clothing, and there's shelter. But food, clothing, and shelter has WASH as a cross-cutting factor in all. When you are looking at food, you look at WASH. So you look at clothing, you look at WASH. Then you look at shelter, you look at WASH. And so it's most critical to understand these key elements. So when we were in government, led by President Mahama, as at 2015, 2016, when we have stayed in power for 8 years, our key agenda was to, as much as possible, improve momentarily and monumentally the access to WASH facilities. And so our investments was rather significant. And I readily recall from 2012 to 2016, we had invested $1.1 billion in access to water and sanitation. And I believe that was significant. In fact, $1.1 billion in sanitation alone, waste management. And some of the projects that we invested in included the 8.4-kilometer new sewage and the repairs of the 50-kilometer old sewage that covered the areas of Achimota, Medina, University of Ghana, UPSA. In fact, the entire Achimota stretch covering North Legon up to Medina, the entire sewage system of about 50 kilometers was repaired, and some 8.4-kilometer new sewage systems were built, including some 3,000 manhole sewage repairs were done under us, and that we invested about $1.1 billion. I am not even talking about the number of water treatment plants that we built across the country. And within 4 years, we built about 9 of them. Notable amongst them is the Kumewu water plants, which we always talk about, and so on and so forth. 9 major water treatment plants. And we were very hopeful that the kind of significant gains that we have done, the kind of investments we have done, would have been continued. Again, in sanitation, for example, you know the Kolemudo treatment plant. The Kolemudo treatment plant, which we started, was a very key monumental, project to improve the wash situation in the Accra and its environs, Accra metropolis and its environs. And that is an overarching project that we thought was very important for improvement in wash. And I readily recall the 15-kilometer new sewage that we constructed from Dansoman to Accra Central. And those were all pointed to improving the wash situation. This and the investment in water was what got Ghana to move from urban water coverage from some 58.5% in 2008 to some 76% in 2016. And this, we believe, was a very significant leap from 58.5 to 76%. And I believe if our friends in government had continued at the same pace, we would have completely had 100% coverage of urban water supply. But again, as we can see, our friends went to bed on the need to improve wash facilities. Then you look at rural water supply. Rural water supply. I believe this is more important for a nation like Ghana, because we have majority of our people, our families and friends living in rural areas. And the conditions under which they live and the kind of water they drink is so bizarre that it's not even worth for animals. But again, we have performed so poorly in water supply. And when we assumed power in 2009, the total urban water supply coverage was around 56.5%. And we have had to invest heavily through several programs and projects to extend rural water supply. And as at the time we were leaving power, it was around 75.6% of rural water coverage. And I believe that is also a significant leap. And if our friends had continued, perhaps we would have made some significant improvement. Indeed, this was achieved because of projects like the Human Security Department that we established under National Security. And under the National Security, we were constructing these boreholes in the rural areas so that we can give them access to, quality and clean water to drink. And that is why we achieved that. Again, we have seen that our friends in government, even though they set Ministry for Water and Sanitation, have done very, very little in this regard. And I'm sure the achievements of that ministry is there for everybody to see. We know the popular achievement from that ministry. So there is a need for us to do more. I don't know why you are laughing. I'm not talking about the $1 million under the bed. I'm talking about the real achievements. It's there for everybody to see. And I recall under sanitation, that was the time that we embarked on a major and aggressive policy to distribute within a matter of 1 year 100,000 bins for homes so that they are able to manage the waste. Because most importantly, it's not only about the production of the waste and the disposal of the waste, but it is about the management of the processes, from where you gather the waste to the movement of the waste to the disposal of the waste. And so there is a need for an integrated management of waste in WASH. And so you can't look at one side and leave the other. So once you look at the generation of the waste in the homes, you must look at how you can collect the waste efficiently. And that has been one of the biggest problems. So you go to my area in Russia, Sukura, and you see that when we generate the waste, the way we dispose the waste in front of the house, we pour it there and put some fire in there and burn it, because there are no bins to collect them. And so we must put together systems to deal with that. And that was what we did under President Mahama. So we didn't only distribute the bins, we were able to improve the collection of the waste, and we put together the Accra compost plant, which we started construction under President Mahama. And the Accra compost and recycling plant was meant to recycle the waste that was being produced and disposed. And so we believe this model, which is an integrated management system for sanitation and waste, both solid, electronic, and liquid waste, it's very key and it's fundamental to our success in achieving accessible and improved WASH situation in Ghana. You are aware we launched our youth manifesto yesterday. And yesterday, because it is only for the youth, we didn't talk about WASH. But what we have done as our policies and our Social Democratic Party is that all our manifestos from 2012 till now, we have a central column for WASH. And we are not going to deviate from that. This time around, we have a section that is fully dedicated with concrete, workable, practical solutions to deal with the issue of WASH. And we believe that at the rate we were able to achieve 4 years under President Mahama, if we are able to get the nod from the people of Ghana, which we are very confident about, that the people are going to give us the mandate to lead this country from next year, we would be able to accelerate and improve the achievements that our friends have abandoned over the period, and be able to achieve the ultimate of 100% access to quality and potable water for urban areas and rural areas, and improve sanitation for all, and most importantly, protect our environment. And lastly, before I sit down, Ben, I know you are giving me the time. Lastly, before I sit down, we will not be able to succeed in all the gains that we would make in WASH if we don't look at the issue of climate change. And that is why I feel deeply worried and rather backward that in 21st century 2024, a country that is growing at this rate would allow our forest reserves to become a mining hub, where politicians and small-scale miners and galamseyers have just jumped into our forest reserves and they are depleting it. We are refusing to appreciate the effects of climate change on WASH, because it's a reverse relationship. Climate change affects WASH in every single way that you can look at it, from water to the sanitation itself to the hygiene. Climate change has impact on it. And good practices in WASH also impacts on climate change, because if we are able to produce the right water sources or protect the right water sources, and we are managing the cycling of water very, very well, we would also be protecting the environment. And so, as a country and as a party, what we are looking at is a more integrated system for WASH, where WASH depends on climate change, but climate change, most importantly, is managed in a way that it can be sustainable for water, sanitation, and hygiene. And so on this note, we'll thank you once again for affording us this opportunity. We have engaged Water Aid, and we have engaged a number of civil society organizations that are into WASH. Some few months ago, we engaged the Natural Resource Governance Institute, and we also extensively discussed WASH. And so you can be assured, Joy FM, Water Aid, and all the stakeholders in WASH, that for we, the NDC, WASH is number one, and is very critical to the survival of the ordinary Ghanaian, and so we are not underestimating it at all in our preparation for an effective public policy that is responsive to the needs of the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Braimah Otokuno. So you went 3 minutes beyond your time. Dr. Kokofu did 1 minute above his time. You decided to do 3. I'm hoping Courage will not come and do 5 minutes. Where's Courage, Nobi? I see you there. But on a more serious note, Dr. Peter Braimah Otokuno, later during the open forum, I would like you to reflect on this statement by the former President John Dramani Mahama, your flag bearer. We will close down the Ministry of Sanitation, 1, to reduce expenditure, and 2, I don't see any use. The country is dirtier than when there was no Ministry of Sanitation. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, presidential candidate, National Democratic Congress. So during the open forum, I'll give you opportunity to, you've waxed lyrical here. I like what I heard, but is it in line with what your party will be doing? For those of you watching us, we are live on Joy News, live on Joy 99.7 FM, myjoyonline.com, and all our social media handles. The next party we're going to hear from, some of you decide to call that group the Afafanto group. We're going to hear from the Deputy Director of Policy for the Movement for Change, or the Alliance for Revolutionary Change, in the person of Mr. Courage Nobi, and he's courageously walking here. Courage, the fact that you are called Courage doesn't mean you should courageously take more than 10 minutes. Yeah. So stick to 10 minutes.
We are courageously disciplined.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And, good evening to all, and both present here and those who've joined us virtually and on traditional media. Greetings from the Movement for Change, the Afafranto Party. In case you are in doubt, this is Afafranto. And with me here is the Great Transformational Plan, which is the document that our founder and leader, John Alan Trematin, has put together. We have copies available online on alantrematin.org. So everything I'm going to read here is verifiable when you pick a copy from online. WASH. First, let me extend gratitude to Joy FM and the Joy News crew, as well as WaterAid and all the dignitaries present for this opportunity. The Movement for Change believes that the missing link in all of this, all the challenges you are having with climate change and everything, is the lack of leadership. You can pump in money everywhere. You can donate millions of dollars annually to solving a problem. Without ethical leadership, a leadership of integrity, nothing will be achieved. And what would happen is that you would throw money at it, and the problem now becomes a money-making venture for many people. Across the Fourth Republic, before I came here, I tried to scan through a number of the promises of the various governments as far as WASH is concerned. And you will see increased spending, increased spending, increased spending. The Honorable Kokofu repeated that right here. But we beg to differ. It is not about increased spending, but it is about a leadership of integrity that is able to do what it says it will do. And so without that missing link, both what my good old friend Dr. Otukono said and everything would end up not achieving much. And the evidence of that is in our failure across both President Mahama and the NDC and Alhaji represented here by Honorable Kokofu to fight Galamsey head on. If you cannot protect your water bodies, if you cannot protect where you get your water from. I was born at Enyinem. I schooled at the Wakwa State College, Chebi. 3 major rivers take their source from the Etiwa mountain range. In 2006, I was in high school when that mountain range was designated a World Heritage Site because of its biodiversity richness. Today, I visited my school, which was bordered by the Braimah River, and the river is non-existent. It's all now holes and patches of brown water. when you watch that kind of pillaging to happen, whether you are NDC or NPP, ab initio, you have failed. So until we can do that, there is no end to standing here and saying that we've distributed dustbins and all of that. If you distribute dustbins and people do not have access to safe drinking water, you've done nothing. Because at the end of the day, all hygiene is water. Water is hygiene, water is sanitation. So if you fail to protect our water bodies, you have failed ab initio. Before we go into all the other lofty ideas and policy, and this is the firm belief of the Movement for Change, and the difference that the Movement for Change is bringing this year. It's a credible leadership, a leadership with a proven track record of integrity in public service. That is what every other thing will be hinged on. To specific policy lines. The Environmental Protection Agency is a very important agency for this WASH agenda. And so what the Movement for Change promises to do is to undertake a comprehensive review of it and further grant it an authority status and more autonomy to be able to do what it says it will do. So to that end, a law will be passed. We'll go to Parliament with a bill to pass a law to grant the agency an authority status so that they will have the capacity to do what they are mandated to do. The Honorable Chairman intends to appoint a high-level policy advisor on science, technology, innovation, and climate change to the President. And this will be like the climate change ambassador of the presidency. So focal attention on that aspect. Again, we will seek to establish the Ghana National Research Fund. Climate issues, we are still understudying it. We don't fully understand it completely yet. So there's a need to increase our funding into research and allocation to climate research to be able to establish more information about it so that we can better manage it, particularly localized research. We understand that it's a global phenomenon, but it has 8 nuanced local manifestations. And we need to increase research into that to ensure that we understand exactly how it is impacting our local environment and how we can deal with that. Again, within 2 years, and here I stress, within 2 years, eliminate galamsey. Within 2 years, Alan Trematin promises to eliminate galamsey from Ghana. It started from 2013 all the way through to 2016, 2017, new government came, and to that promise, the law that was passed in 2022, LI 2462, that allows mining in forest reserves will be revoked. Will be revoked completely. Because when you have an illegality occurring, it is the mark of irresponsibility to now use law to legitimize the illegality. And that is what was done in 2022. And the parliament, which is comprised almost on equal part between the NDC and the NPP, should bow its head in shame for passing that law, LI 2462. Our forest reserves have been with us for years, since colonial times. And so, because of the lack of leadership, when an illegality is occurring, because a forest reserve, there should not be anything like mining, not prospecting, nothing in a forest reserve. It's a reserved area. So when you now have failed to fight it, to stop it, you go to Parliament. And between the NPP and the NDC, they agreed and accepted to now legitimize the illegality. To this end, I think the dialogue should end because it means that there is, as far as both parties are concerned, they have already demonstrated their lack of commitment to dealing with this particular issue. Develop and implement a new business model for dealing substantively with illegal mining by facilitating the establishment of small-scale mining companies to be owned by groups of young people who are currently engaged. The most important thing to do is look at the situation. Can we have this group of young people who need to be part of the economic activity anyway? Set up cooperatives, properly regulated, and now given allocations, supported technically with business management and everything with the necessary resources to participate in responsible local mining, so that they don't feel dispossessed by the Newmonts and all these big firms. That is what we need to do. And just for the records, our third largest foreign exchange earner, cocoa, has been suffering because of this menace. This year, we are projected to do less than half what we were able to do in 2021, just about 500,000 metric tons. And that even we may not be able to hit. So this is the effect that this menace is having. Again, undertake a comprehensive review of all legislation in respect of the mandate, management, and operation of institutions in the natural resource sector. Just like corruption, and sometimes you have so many organizations, so many institutions with similar mandates. So at the end of the day, what happens is that they play chaskele with the issue. This one bounces it off to this one tosses it off to this one, just reneging on responsibility. Alan Martin says, we will conduct a review and harmonize the provision so that if it is EPA, empower EPA a singular responsibility to take the problem and to handle it. That clarity of policy, we believe, is very, very important in dealing with that. Enforce existing legislation and regulation in respect of land use in Ghana. Sanitation challenges, particularly in urban areas, is due to poor land use regulation. I grew up in Tema. And growing up in Tema, I could walk from Community 1, Site 19, where I was living, all the way to Community 9, light industrial area, close to the motorway. And this feet of mine will not touch on soil because it was properly planned and paved. There were green belts between Community 4 and Community 7, between Community 8 and Community 9, and these green belts were there so that in case of disaster or any happening, we would have the opportunity to take people there. This is not what we are seeing with the development in East Legon, in Adrigano, and all the urban areas and the cities that you're looking. So proper land use, so that you will not have the situation where in Accra, there are about 3 major waterways to the sea from the Equiape mountain range. So currently, around Ashom and Hacho, places that were left for decades, that were serving as a reservoir that holds rainwater from the mountains and gradually releases it, is full of other structures today. The engineers are here. The problem is that even in allowing development in those places, we are not regulating the development with the necessary infrastructure that would prevent disasters. So one rain and the entire city is dirty. This, the movement for change believes, must be tackled head on, and we'll do that. Lastly, finally, waste segregation and all other associated behavioral change will be championed by us. And that's why the sixth objective of movement for change is behavioral and attitudinal change. To that end, all schools will be empowered to begin waste segregation so that through the young people, we take that culture to their homes, and over time, before they become adults, we are very confident that we'll behave better as far as sanitation is concerned. Thank you very much. God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Courage Nobi. He was just asking me, I hope I was within time. You snuck it right in, 10 minutes and just a little in there. Please, let's put our hands together for the representatives of the political parties. We are grateful all of you have come through sharing your thoughts and the roadmap, what likely would be a roadmap for our country moving forward when it comes to WASH and climate change. In case you just joined us, it's the Joy News National Dialogue on WASH and climate change. The theme, enhancing climate resilience, safe and sustainable WASH services delivery. And of course, we are here at the Nat Hall. Having heard from our political parties, and Courage, you got me thinking, you know, I always contemplate this. Our parks and gardens, for those of you who know some of those spots, a lot of them are non-existent. Some have been sold. Others have been taken over by politicians. And I say it unashamedly, though the politicians should be ashamed. Parks and gardens. I've been to other countries, and you'll find in almost every community, in Brazil, in Cuba, in the West, you have a hub where people can go and play and do many different things. Recreation. Where do you find those spots? Even here in Accra. And if you do find them, you have to pay through the nose to access such places. So what are we bequeathing to our progeny, so the generations to come? What? Poison? Death? But we are all looking on. And when you talk like this, they say, oh, as for you, LI 2462, like you mentioned as well. How we frame some of our policies in our country, only God knows. But I'll leave it here. We shall now go to the next round of commentary, and we shall be hearing from UNICEF Ghana. The representative, Samuel Amako-Mensah, he's a WASH specialist. Mr. Amako-Mensah, if you're here, please do us the honors. Please, let's welcome him. You have some 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. Distinguished participants and the audience beyond this room in this very important forum. Permit me to add the voice of UNICEF in emphasizing the importance of this forum and the fact that we are really glad to have participated and to make a modest contribution to this discussion around WASH, water sanitation and hygiene services, within the context of climate change resilience. Here, it is important to emphasize that when we talk about the resilience in terms of climate change, it isn't just the fact that WASH is key to resilience, but also the fact that to achieve resilience, our WASH services have to be resilient in themselves. It is already, we've had a lot of data and information around the situation in water and sanitation in the country, so I wouldn't further gild the lily, as they say. But here, the important thing is to mention is that already climate change is with us. The risks are rife. We're already seeing it to varying degrees across various parts of the countries. We are experiencing climate variability in the area of rainfall. We are seeing more flash floods. And even the temperatures are soaring in certain areas. And all these have impacts on the population, especially the women and the children of the country. So a discussion like this is not only strategic in terms of the here and the now. We've heard that WASH has a bearing on probably 7 or 8 of the other SDGs: education, health, nutrition and hunger, even sustainable cities. But the discussion we are having here is pivotal because it has a bearing on the children of this country, and an investment in them is not only strategic now, but it is in the longer term in terms of their survival and development. Already a lot has gone on in terms of trying to address the risks through mitigation and adaptation to climate change. And our hope is that this conversation will deepen that discussion, in that the process that faces us in the next 5 to 6 months is a critical one in terms of the strategic direction of this country in addressing this issue. There are issues that need to be addressed: water safety and security, environmental degradation, even the energy efficiency in the sanitation value chain are all critical to this discussion. It is therefore important that we look to maintain an institutional arrangement that can continue to drive progress in this area, consolidate the gains made, and also accelerate the achievement of our targets. The issues that border around this include financing, include regulation, include data and knowledge management, but all these have to be driven by a functional, efficient, and effective institutional arrangement. And it's our hope that this discussion will lead us in that direction and avert the minds of our political parties in that manner so that at the end of the day, the country will benefit from the discourse. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Amwako Mensah. The first speaker who has stuck to time. Please, let's clap for him again. But moving on from there, I'd like us now to head the way of Harold Eseku. But before we get to Harold, let me just remind you that we are live on Joy News, live on Joy 99.7 FM, myjoyonline.com, and all our social media platforms. Up next, to deliver another 5-minute intervention, we have the Senior Sanitation Specialist, World Bank, and the WASH Lead for Development Partners in the person of Harold Eseku. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him.
Thank you very much. I think, unfortunately for me, my colleague, who is part of the Development Partners, Amwako Mensah, has virtually said everything which I had planned to say. But I just want to emphasize on a few key points. WASH and climate change are inseparable. And for us, on the Development Partners side, one of the things that we say is that when climate is not added to a WASH intervention, it should be an integral part of the thinking behind what you want to do. It's not that we are doing this and then how do we do something to bring climate to it. It's just like sustainability. When we are talking about climate resilience and we are talking about sustainability, it is the bedrock of the thinking of every intervention you make in the WASH sector. And so we would like to urge our political parties as we prepare and as we plan on the side of the development partners that let's make this an integral part of what we do, and let us recognize that if we are talking about human capital development, it's already been mentioned, most of the SDGs will not move without water. But we want to look at development holistically, cutting across all sectors. We need to have WASH underpinning whatever is being done. One thing I like to say is that there isn't one single industry, not one, which can survive without water. If we talk about manufacturing of vehicles, it takes so much water to get one vehicle manufactured. An exercise book for a school child, the volume of water required for the paper to get that, and if you have the water being polluted, if you have the water not being in the right state, then we have a challenge. As we know, water is life, sanitation is dignity. We want to urge, as development partners, we support the government of Ghana. We have been supporting the government of Ghana before the Fourth Republic, through the Fourth Republic, through NDC, through MPP, through NDC, and back to MPP. And come 7th January 2025, whichever government is in power, we will continue to support, but we'd like to urge all the political parties to ensure that what they want to do, they should look beyond, not just today, but let's look into the future. Let's look at our children. Let's look at our country. Let's look at our environment and ensure that whatever we do is sustainable and it is climate resilient so that our children will not look at us, your children will not look at you in a certain way one day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Eseku. When you mentioned January 2025 and which party would be in power, it just struck me. Maybe we need the NGOs, the eco-friendly NGOs to be in power. And maybe then we can deal with Galamsey and all the other related issues. Because once the politicians are there, we know what happens. Thank you very much, Mr. Eseku. Well, up next, we're going to hear from WaterAid. There's going to be a presentation by WaterAid. And you have 10 minutes for this one. Ibrahim Musa, he is Head of Strategy, Policy, and Campaign with WaterAid. Please, let's welcome Ibrahim Musa.
Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen from political parties and sector leads, my country director, and colleagues from the watch sector, as well as from the diplomatic corps. This is just to add to the context that has already been presented. So in some of the slides, I may be skipping because a lot has been said in most of them, but it is just to add to the dimension of the institutional arrangement and the importance of giving attention to climate issues within an institutional framework that will promote sustainable watch services delivery. So my presentation will highlight this, but I will emphasize on areas that have so far not been touched, because a lot has been said by previous speakers. We are talking about climate change, and previous speakers have mentioned why climate change, to the fact that they are almost inseparable within the context of our time. And so my objective here is to be speaking about what are the primary climate change risks to watch infrastructure and services? Are we planning, supporting, facilitating, and building watch infrastructure that will withstand some climate threats issues such as flooding, droughts, and what have you? How resilient is the Ghana watch sector to climate change and some other objective areas? But for the first part that has already been spoken about by previous speakers, elements of climate change reflects in rising sea levels. In areas of the north where the threat is real, because of also our closeness to the Sahel, you will find manifestations of flooding. Indeed, as we speak, the 5 regions of the north are praying for rains to fall, because the rains has eluded them. Farmers have gone to the farm, planted, the rains are not coming. So they are on their knees praying for rains to fall. But that is how climate change is close to us. Environmental degradation has also contributed to accelerate a lot of the issues that we're talking about. And the impacts of and severity of climate change will only deepen in the watch sector if we are paying less attention to the issues of designs of our infrastructure. And senior engineers are here. I'm happy to know that one of the senior people in this room, Engineer Kobana Japan, is well placed. Engineer Harold is also here, and many others who will tell us how, can walk us through how, in terms of engineering specifications, we can do to withstand the shocks of climate change. But how is our planning for service delivery responding to that as a country and as a sector? The next slide. The outlook is also that population growth is putting a lot of pressure on water resources, economic development, and agriculture. In fact, if you look at this first column, it is deepening our understanding of the fundamental structure of the Ghanaian economy. A lot of the areas of Ghanaian economy is structured that it is climate sensitive, agriculture, energy, even water resources. So it is important to be paying attention to this. But at the same time, the manifestations of climate change is also contributing to supply of water resources diminishing. And the hydrogeologists will tell us what is happening with underground water because of drought and all that. But most importantly, the limitations of human capacity for planning and management of the exigencies of climate change can also not be underplayed. Are our institutions well prepared in terms of staff numbers, in terms of skills, in terms of tools, equipments, to work with to respond to the threat that we are faced with? But most importantly, the climate science is data-driven. It is not about too much talking without evidence. What are we doing to gather the necessary data from across the country to be able to position us? And here we have listened to the good intentions of the political parties. But integral to this is how, come 7th January, any party leading the country will resource the institutions responsible to drive this evidence generation for us to tackle climate change. But most importantly, the last two speakers touch on it, the institutional arrangements to be able to drive this agenda. I like the point around different players playing different roles, even within the state sector. Who is responsible for what? Multiple actors playing multiple roles. Roles are conflicting, and the need for coordination very critical in our drive to climate change. The next slide. To just make some conceptual clarifications, the Ministry of Sanitation, under which we are working, did a study, and it was concluded last year. They call it the Wash Resilience Study. Thankfully, it was funded by UNICEF. This is how they capture what resilience is in that report. Ability to adapt and recover effectively when exposed to unexpected changes, while maintaining consistent service levels under various stresses. And I think my country director also painted how in water aid we talked about climate change, and that does not sound different from the ministry climate resilience study that was concluded. But the key question is, how are we aligning the institutions of states to be able to deliver in terms of these beautiful reports? The next slide. Again, in that same resilience study, this is the policy governance and institutional arrangement that has been proffered. Interestingly for us, EPA, Office of the President, Parliament, all has oversight. National Development Planning Commission, I talked about data. Environmental Protection Agency, which is supposed to be at the apex of driving policy. The ministries are there: Community Water and Sanitation Agency, Ghana Water Limited, Water Resources Commission. They are all important state agencies. Ghana Geological Survey, Hydrological Authority, Ministry of Communication, and below you will find MMDAs, Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Assemblies. The National Development Planning Systems Act 480 mandates them to take planning seriously. The importance of this slide I'm painting is how coordinated are these institutions? How coordinated are these institutions to ensure that when EPA is driving climate resilient agenda, with a very clear policy direction, no other ministry or MDA is counteracting what EPA is doing. How are we responsive to coherent planning to avoid policy somersault? And that is the essence of this, with Parliament having oversight, which is very crucial. And that is what we also want to underscore. 261 MMDs are under Ministry of Local Government, providing critical services. How are these services reflective of climate resilience and responsiveness? How are they working with Institute of Planners? All of them are part of this governance equation. So this is the essence of this particular slide. Next. And so I have already spoken to this. How well is coordination among these institutions? How can we effectively promote resilient wash services delivery in Ghana? What is the role of Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization, and Rural Development? As we speak now, we're lucky from 2017 to be given a Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. Honestly, for all intent and purposes, the ministry has done well. Coordination used to be a problem because we used to have sanitation sitting somewhere, hygiene sitting somewhere, but with a defined Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, at least somehow we have a clear direction with water, sanitation, and hygiene coming together. But we still have challenges with coordination, especially with other allied ministries. We are doing well with coordinating with Ministry of Health, but in terms of wash in healthcare facilities, which is critical to promoting maternal and child health, the coordination could be better. School wash could be better. And MESTI, very critical. How are we coordinating with MESTI, and for that matter, EPA, to promote harmony in terms of institutional delivery? Next slide. What is the implementing arm of the Ministry of Sanitation for wash services delivery? We have advocated for the National Sanitation Authority below the national level. Ministry of Sanitation is the policy arm. If we were to have below National Sanitation Authority, just like many state agencies has authority, then that authority can have very clear defined relationship with institutions such as Institute of Engineers and what have you, and work closely with local government ministry to ensure that all the good intentions of coordination are promoted for effective and sustainable service delivery. And that has been hanging over the years. We think that come next year, in terms of institutional arrangement, National Sanitation Authority should be on the front burner. If we are not able to get it before December, it should be crucial next step come next year. Next slide. The water policy, which has just been launched by the ministry quite recently, has very good intentions for climate change. But it has also been asking critical questions about how they can relate. And our proposal is that with these good intentions in the water policy, we still need a very clear institutional arrangement. I won't spend time because previous speakers have already touched on these intentions coming from the new water policy. Next slide. And so from the water policy itself, it has mentioned limited institutional capacity and collaboration to analyze, interpret, and communicate drought and flood information to end users, which is crucial to stemming the tide of climate resilient wash services. Next slide. We are also saying that for SDG 6, to be able to achieve it, it is crucial we look at our institutional arrangement. And I think a lot has been said also about the need to achieve all the SDGs, but without paying attention to WASH, we can forget about SDG 1 on ending hunger. We can forget about SDG 2 on poverty, SDG 1 poverty, SDG 2 hunger, SDG 3 good health, up to SDG 11, which talks about cities, and then SDG 13 on climate change, because WASH is central to everything about all the SDGs. So there's a need to pay critical attention to the overarching role of WASH. But the role of the youth is also crucial. the youth have freshness, they have innovation, they have the drive. So central to all our activities, we should also ensure that we prioritize the youth involvement in climate resilient wash services, because they have a lot to also contribute to give us this attention. And there is the urgent need for all of us to be on board to promote multi-sector coordination to ensure climate resilient wash services are delivered within a coherent institutional arrangement. Thank you very much. I think I'll end here.
Thank you, Harold Eseku. He was asking whether he had kept to time. I will add you to the political party speakers. But we're all trying, all in an effort to ensure that WASH is given prime of place and that we, of course, try to mitigate climate change and the way forward. Thank you very much, our speakers from the World Bank and WASH Development, UNICEF Ghana, and WaterAid. Thank you very much. We'll quickly move on to our panel discussion, after which, and we're going to try to hasten a bit so that we can make up for lost time. After that, we'll have an open forum, and then we'll take the presentation of the resolutions, and we'll gradually come to the end of this program. Let me now quickly introduce to you the panel members. And the very first one is a seasoned development professional with over 15 years of experience in advocacy, policy influencing, and coordinating multi-donor funded programs across the water, sanitation, and hygiene, business advocacy, and educational sectors in Ghana and Uganda. For 12 years, she has been a key player in the WASH sector, focusing on policy advocacy and community participation to ensure rights-based access to water and sanitation services. As the Executive Secretary of the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, that is CONIWAS, she oversees the coalition's advocacy initiatives and manages the Secretariat's operations. Her passion for human rights and gender equality drives her work, particularly in advocating better WASH services for women and girls. She also serves as the focal person for the African Network of Civil Society Organizations in Ghana and is the CSO focal person for Sanitation and Water for All, coordinating national and regional advocacy efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, our viewers far and near, I give you Basilia Nanbigne, Executive Secretary, Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. Please sit in the middle for me. I want so that we can have a proper sandwich on the panel. Our next speaker or panel member is a global urban poverty fighter. He is former chairman of the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. He is an inclusive urban development practitioner and the executive director of the People's Dialogue on Human Settlements. I give you Farouk Braimah, please. Up next, he is a public health researcher and policy analyst with extensive experience in environmental and social determinants of health in low and middle income countries. From needs assessments, intervention design to policy analysis, his perspective is on the big picture. Using systemic thinking and the best evidence available to advise on the effective strategies to address entrenched social and environmental practices around gender, inequitable access to health services in low and middle income countries. He has a lot to offer on this discussion. In March 2024, President Akufo-Addo appointed him the executive director of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. I give you Dr. John Kingsley Krugu. And finally, Dr. Kruger, you have to decide where you're going to. He is a strategic sector counselor on water, cities, and climate at the Embassy of Denmark in Ghana. He has experience from working in the Danish public and private sector, including the municipality of Frederiksberg in Copenhagen and the Confederation of Danish Industry, that is DI Water. And he has, through his career, worked within the utilities sector. He holds a master in marketing, or a master's in marketing and management anthropology from the Aarhus University. I don't know whether I murdered any of those names, but he is in the person of Matthias Thuborg Madsen. He is strategic sector counselor, Danish Embassy of Accra. Thank you very much. Please come this way. And I will join you from this end as we get into the conversation. Mr. Moderator also needs to rest his legs. So as you rest yours, I will rest mine. But just to kickstart the conversation, and I'm going to start with you, Basilia. They say ladies first. So I'm going to start from your end. And this question goes to each one of you. What would you say are your initial thoughts on the importance of providing climate-resilient wash infrastructure and services at the very basic level?
Okay, thank you. And we saw what Ibrahim presented as an overview of what climate resilience is, and which is, I would say in my own way, as being able to anticipate, prepare, and respond to any climate shocks. And so if you are talking about climate resilient wash, it means that the infrastructure must be able to resist any climate shock. People who are using the infrastructure should be able to easily overcome any climate issues and be able to achieve sustainability of their wash services. So at the basic level, we are ensuring that communities, when there's a drought or there's flooding, they can quickly sustain their water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities and be able to use them without really staying back because of the climate shock.
Thank you very much for that response. Farouk, what would be your response on the same? Let me check that. Yes, I believe you are. Yes,
I am. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. My initial response is just to say that we've come a long way. I'm trying to just picture the historical pathway that we've treaded in the past, and I'm more convinced that within the climate seasons that we find ourselves in, the exigencies of climate, both governments that we heard speaking and my colleague from the Butterfly Group seem to be presenting evidence-based conversation rather than politically informed ideologies. And I think that is very inspiring to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those initial thoughts. Dr. Kruger? Is it on? I think we should just check all the microphones to ensure that... Can you use this? Matthias, you might want to check your microphone in advance.
Thank you very much for the question. I think if you listen to the presentations that has taken place, I think it begs asking about the importance of climate resilient infrastructure. We don't have an option. We don't have a choice. That is the way to go. And if we do not do that, we are all in for big trouble. You know, I have to say that when I was sitting there listening to the political parties make presentations, let me borrow the word wash to say I've washed whatever I wanted to say here several times sitting there. And I think that, and I hope that we can lift the conversation to where you are pointing us to look at the importance of what we need to do. I don't want this conversation to be the competition between political parties as to who is the best political party and who has done the best. I think if we were to go that direction, we would not be listening to the figures that were presented here. So do not let's go into a competition for mediocre and lift this conversation at a high level and hope that, and I was just asking myself, for example, that at the point that political parties formed their manifestos committees and was announced to the public, whether WaterAid presented a paper to these committees, you know, because as we speak, Dr. Kokofu said that on Sunday, they are going to adore the MPP manifesto. And then Dr. Otukono says they adored the youth manifesto yesterday or so. Unfortunately, he said because it was youth, he didn't speak about climate wash because it was youth. Now, when we go this direction, the important question you are asking is going to be downplayed, and one of these political parties will take over power in 2025. So we need to lift the conversation and make sure that we consider that if we do not lay the basic infrastructure, all of us here have traveled to countries where the basic infrastructure for wash is so important. Let me give you a strange example. Yesterday, the NPP parliamentary candidate came to my constituency last 2 weeks, and then among the people who came wanted to use a washroom. Okay, and then they went looking for a washroom. They couldn't find one, so somebody said, let's go to the hospital. Most likely there's going to be a washroom. Then when they went to the hospital, when they entered into the washroom, what they saw, they had to contain whatever they wanted to wash. And so one of them called me and said, can you take steps to do something about what is in that hospital? I think those realities is what we need to deal with as we go into this debate and going into election 2024. And not competition as to 2006 I did better, 2008 I did better kind of conversation.
Right.
That will not take us to where we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those initial thoughts. Let's keep them bite-sized but punchy. Matthias?
Thank you very much. I will do brief. From our perspective as the Embassy of Denmark, we have long engagement here in Ghana through Danita, and my colleagues have worked with a lot of you, but from our standpoint, we are looking at the water cycle holistically. So regarding what we are doing, we need to see both water upstream and downstream. We need to connect and we need to have information. So to do climate resilient and have a good environment around our water bodies or downstream with wastewater, we need to have data. We need to have information to make the right decisions, and then we have to look at where we have most impact. And this is the way we can go towards like a preventive way of securing water and sanitation in the future. And just briefly touch upon that you couldn't find a toilet out there. I do think we also need to learn and listen to other sectors. Other sectors has been able to disrupt the market. Other sectors have been able to be innovative. For instance, look at the smartphones, the telephones. Many people don't even have electricity. They don't have water. They don't have a toilet. But they do have a charged phone, like out in Volta region, Upper West. I don't even know where they get the power from, but they can make the business from the phone. And I do think there are other industries, sectors that the water sector needs to learn from, both publicly and privately. And we need to have the public-private partnership to scale, to be able to reach the SDGs. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias, for those initial comments. And I feel this is probably one of the most basic things you could give somebody. You know, toilet facilities, proper sanitation, I don't know whether anybody spoke about Accra being the cleanest city in Africa, but no, who mentioned that? Nobody did. Okay, all right. It's good I didn't mention it. But let's get into the next one. Even as we talk about all of this, then we must also focus some attention on the Ministry for Sanitation and Water Resources. And I'm coming to you, Basilia. Within the current institutional arrangement for the ministry, how then do we place front and center climate resilient wash services delivery into policy making? It's one thing espousing it, but how do we put it in policy for proper execution? Basilia.
Thank you very much. I must say that hitherto the ministry or even the sector was very low when it comes to climate issues. It's like climate was a concept we were all trying to grapple with. And anyone who wanted issues on climate ran straight to MESTI. But I can say that from a couple of years ago, the sector is beginning to come out more on climate and trying to do more around climate issues. And the water policy that was launched just a few months ago clearly spells out how climate issues should be tackled. And I must say, even the 2007 water policy touched on it, but it wasn't detailed. And we have the environmental sanitation policy being revived, and definitely climate issues will be anchored in it. Now we have a focal person for climate in the sanitation ministry, who is trying to work very closely with the Ministry of, with MESTI, EPA, to see how sanitation can be embedded well in our wash sector. I can say the TRACFIN report, that's a tracking sanitation and water expenditure, for last year didn't show our ministry spending much on climate or the budgeting for it clearly. But with the new innovations coming and the focal person for it, it's hopeful that going forward, we will see our ministry, our policy department really, and then planning department really planning and budgeting for climate. Because we can't have climate issues being run like a project in the ministry. It has to be properly streamlined. And I think it has to start with the policies that we are launching. We need a strategic plan to implement the policies. And this will go a long way to help the policy and budgeting units to really and appropriately plan for it, so that we don't expect that we get money from somewhere or we depend on development partners just to implement projects for climate, but it should be really mainstreamed. And so I think that's a call for us CSOs, development partners and others, to look at the next budgeting for the ministry. Since our policies are outlining it, let's look at what strategies can be developed and how we really budget for it and plan activities alongside. Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts, Basilia. And of course, it also goes down to how you collaborate as the CSOs yourselves. But Farouk, on that same point, even as you add on, there are some who also say that the Ministry for Sanitation and Water Resources, lovely name, practically nothing being done. That is what some say. Do we still need to retain that ministry to execute this? What other alternatives exist?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the question should rather be, what is the best institutional, financial, and organizational arrangement to deliver climate-resilient wash? Now, when we elevate the conversation to that level, it becomes very meaningful for engagement. It doesn't really bother so much on which institution, whether it's a ministry or it's an authority, but I think it's more about the prioritization of that particular sector and keeping us together. In fact, our history has been, and it's good to go back into history. Previously, you know the story better than I do. The Ghana Water Company, Ghana Water and Sewage Corporation, you split it, PNDC Law 207 comes, local governance comes in, you push it to local government ministry, it shifts away, we have sanitation ministry, Western Housing at the other side, and all of that, we were having serious challenges around maintaining a proper monitoring and targeting system. Because once you continue to have the ministry, you can't even when we do budget tracking as CSOs, we need to pick our bags and go to finance and go to works and housing and come to local government, and you don't find data. My take is that whichever form it takes, the sanitation, water, and hygiene must work together, they have to stay. And we are very, very unanimous on that, and we'll use the last energy in ourselves to protect this hard-gained fight that we've gone through. Just to wind up, I feel strongly the challenge is a water wash governance problem. Because you see, if you follow the whole conversation, it doesn't really think, it's political. It's our governance. It's about the soft things that the institutions and structures that ensure that all of these finances and monitoring and arrangements for delivery are well kept. I want to propose strongly, and that's my take, that WASH is something that is assessed within a local environment. It is assessed in a housing environment. And so the local government's ministry, from the outset, when I started, I felt that there was a need for very important resource, like water, like sanitation, must be very close to the doorsteps of the people. And during the emergencies, of you who worked during the COVID, you would begin to appreciate why it should be in the local governance structures. Because clearly, when you move such projects to the center and you have a national sanitation authority, you would still have to provide the legs upon which they deliver. And so my personal one is that, look, irrespective of the name, we want to remain together. The water and sanitation must be prioritized. Every government that comes in must demonstrate how you're going to support this sector to work. Climate adaptation assessments has to be done to see what changes must we do. Look, we don't do redundancy planning here. We don't have redundancy infrastructure. And when they locked the streets of Accra, those who wanted to use the public toilets, when COVID came, in fact, in the slum communities, please remember, we're talking of about, in Accra, about 60 to 70% living in informal settlements and slums. And so when we speak about policies and programs and where it should be, again, local governance. Because why? All of these things around putting social infrastructure and getting people to do behavioral change and getting people to budget for water and sanitation must happen within the accountability structures. Yeah. The central governments don't provide those accountability structures. In fact, the Act 936 is very clear. Section 40 to 48 provides very clear participation guidelines. And for CSOs, our best place to demand accountability, it is when it is placed within the local governance structure. I think I would want to pause here and then to see what colleagues will say. Thank you.
Thank you, Farouk. You just hit the nail on the head. Very, very insightful points you made. Sometimes even in resolving problems, you look at the solutions and the solutions don't technically address the problems where they ought to. Dr. Krugu, briefly on that point, and then I'll take brief remarks from
yes,
before we move on.
Very briefly indeed, and thank you, Farouk, for that comment. I want to share my experience. I live in a different jurisdiction and came back to Ghana, and I went and settled in a municipality within Greater Accra. And so the following day, I said I was going to the municipal assembly to register, to register so that my resident in that municipality will be recognized. So when I got to the municipality, I was seen as a strange animal who had just dropped from Mars, because people asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to register and I said, because if I don't register, who's going to be responsible for the sewage that I am going to generate? Who is going to? So I need to register and be sure who and where to pay what. It didn't exist. I did not have a place. And apparently I can live in that municipality for years, and the municipal assembly would not even know that a new entrant has come into the municipality and I'm going to generate waste. So this is a tip of the iceberg of what we are talking about. And I hope that our policy-making process and political parties thinking about the next government, we can see how we can indeed empower the local governance system to have these systems in place. Because the reason is because I moved from one municipality to another in the country where I was living, and I had to do detailed registration of all of these and pay for it because I am going to generate waste. So I think if we empower the local, the municipal, the MMDAs, and situate some of these things, you can have the ministry responsible for policy making. And there too we have a problem about this policy coherence. I was coordinating a project and we had a big battle between EPA and Water Resources Commission as to a simple matter as to who is responsible for discharge into the water bodies. And as I speak, we had to go for a legal consultant to come and inform. And so this is important when we are making policies and or when Parliament is enacting laws, to be able to have this policy coherence. That is also one of the issues that we need to. I need to be brief, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurugu, on that. I'm wondering, from the Danish standpoint, policy, the examples you see, I always like examples that are palpable, ones that you have lived. Policy, the ministry, climate change, that nexus. From where you come, what do you see that perhaps we could implement here?
From our side at the Embassy of Denmark, we look at, I said it before, we look at data, we look at impact, regardless of any institutional framework. I think if you just look a little bit back in Denmark, we have one of the first Ministry of Environment because we were facing similar issues. In 1973, we passed the first environmental law in the world, which means that we are building bridges across entities, public-private entities, to solve the issues, because we looked at, for instance, water as a holistic resource all around the value chain. Right now, we are also looking at numbers here in Ghana. That's the reason we have seen progress on the wash situation. We have had water aid, and my good colleagues here, they're also sharing the progress been made. So what we are seeing now is that progress establish new infrastructure, and we need to maintain that infrastructure. And that's the reason we have engaged in something we call the strategic sector cooperation. We do long-term commitment capacity building. Right now we have the second largest city of Denmark in Aarhus has collaboration with Tema Metropolitan Assembly and Ghana Water. So we are looking at making sure Tema is climate resilient holistically, so it becomes a sustainable, livable city. This is the aim. So it's multi-sided approach. There are many solutions, many challenges that need to be addressed. But I don't have the solutions, I don't think in the room, but the experts together can come up with solutions that are gonna be passed on also in an institutional framework in Tema. We do the same on the water side. We work on a target to make to assist Ghana Water in reducing the non-revenue water. And that's a multi-sided approach as well that we are coordinating. And then we also do multilateral with UNICEF, for instance. They're trying to do a revolving sanitary fund because private capital is also important. We need the private sector to be engaged in some of the aspects, because even though progress has been made, the data is saying that the SDGs 6 in 2030 is still out of reach. So we need to accelerate, we need to disrupt, and that's the reason I'm telling we need to also look out from the wash sector, we need to learn from other industries. Thank you.
Interesting thoughts you've just shared. Just hold on briefly for me. How long has this collaboration gone on, for example, with Tema, and what are the results you're seeing so far?
So we started in 2019, and I think we could have done more if COVID did not hit, because I think the most important thing in a strategic sector collaboration is that we match engineers, municipal expert from the city of Denmark, to the same expert in Tema to solve the challenges they're facing right now. So they've done a climate adaptation wastewater management plan to look at holistically how to sort of deal with the wastewater. And I'm actually bringing Dr. Kruku to Denmark next week as well to show him how the municipalities working together with the Danish EPA, working together with the private sector to address some of the issues we're also facing in Tema, which is the industrial wastewater. And some of these public-private partnerships, they need to go all around. So that's how it goes right now.
Thank you, Matthias. For those of you catching us live, we're on Joy News. We're also coming your way on Joy 99.7 FM, myjoyonline.com, and all our social media platforms. It is that national engagement on WASH and climate change and how we can build resilience. I'll start with you this time, Farouk. When it comes to, I mean, some may ask, okay, so WASH and climate change, what do they really have in common? We have our emergency technical working groups and all of that. How can we do more in terms of highlighting the issues and working on them from these emergency technical groups?
Yes, like I said, we've heard this word for all the while, coordination. There's an institutional puzzle that we need to unravel. And this institutional puzzle is repeated in all the sectors. When you meet the educational sector, the health sector, they keep repeating this word. It's overflogged. Coordination. I think my worry is that when it comes to the relation between climate and WASH, I keep saying our sector is more like, I call it WASH sectors. Because clearly, the things we deal with, to just reduce ourselves to a sector, sometimes people don't really get what we mean. But I think we work within the WASH sectors with an S. And whether it's water is a whole gamut of conversation in terms of the upstream, downstream, what we use. I don't think we, the WASH advocates, would want to grab a certain portion of the WASH conversation and then others will hold on to the sanitation, others will hold. In fact, solid waste and liquid waste is another ball game. These are different. Urban sanitation, rural sanitation are very different. The very structure within which we run, the urban water, Ghana water, CWSC, that's a big conversation. In fact, I live in Oyarifa. The water starts, it's a small town, Oyarifa, Bokubi, Tema, water systems. Now, Ghana water is just to my right, also on South Street. It's Ghana water. When you pass my house, like 400 meters off my house, there's a Ghana water line. Yet I'm in the community water systems. I think the problems are way, way beyond conversations and institutions. I think we need to crack the whip. The whip is that there's a need for some level of equity lens to be brought on board. Now, when we say equity, we are more looking at how this WASH conversation, in terms of its incomes, in terms of its risks, and then in terms of the terms of burden that it brings on people, needs to be evaluated. Now, once we evaluate them, then you begin to understand the varying impacts of climate. Because the climate conversation is a function of your adaptive capacity. And so if you assume that everybody has the same adaptive capacities, and you begin to sit in the ministries, and then you run a policy on adaptation, and you want to see the stress level, you want to see the attributes of the system, you want to check the, if you like, the reliability or availability, affordability, efficiency. All of these are context specific. And so I would clearly say that we need to be very minded on boxing the whole conversation as though water and sanitation and climate have this. If it's a drought area in the north, I agree in the north, in the Tamale, Tutingle areas and all of those, but water is a very scarce resource. And every day people will have to struggle for drinking water. Now, my question is that if you don't really appreciate the drought conversations that they have in the north, and you want to bring solutions, you really will not solve the problem. So data. I'm just trying to emphasize on my colleagues' information that we don't have the data. Unfortunately, these kinds of data that we have have normally been generated by mostly some CSO generate data. And because of the conversation around official statistics, and politicians don't want to hear the truth on the ground. And so they would frustrate you when you want to feed your data into the national system. Right. And so I think that we need to be very open. Water is life, and all of us need a certain volume of water to survive. This discussion is not so much about, like he said, who is right and who is wrong. I think collectively, if we can focus on how climate is going to worsen the situation, it's so scary. Climate is consistently worsening. In the urban areas, when it rains, the whole infrastructure, the waste that they generate there, the cemeteries that we have, and the water runs through the surface water. In the urban systems, we do surface water. And so the fear is that if you don't treat the collective inclusive model for informal settlements and the poor people who live in the slums, they shit openly. You eat their feces, sorry. But the point is that at what stage are we going to sit back and talk about climate in a way that it becomes too remote? Our problem is governance, investment, and prioritization. Once we're able to do this, the global agenda has set something that is difficult to change. There is a global monitoring system that requires our ministers of water and sanitation to conform. And it's also, this discussion is not so much of just wishing a ministry away. There are steps that you need to conform to, because we're part of a global community, and the WHO and the GLAS systems that we monitor, the sanitation ministers meet with the finance ministers on high level to discuss global issues. We need to be part of the global alignment framework to be able to report inconsistently. So I think it's not so much of just wishing away a ministry, but I think we should really sit back with the political parties and then get them to understand what exactly is the situation on the ground. It's not a binary conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farouk, for adding so much to this conversation. I'd just like to encourage all of you who are actually watching us live on Joy News, and those who also may be following on radio. You can just connect on the live feed. Send us a message on Joy News, the live feed, and we'll actually bring it out. If you have any concerns, any questions, any contributions, you can share them from there. I see Engineer Kwabene Japong. At the right time, I'll come to you so that you can add your submissions. But some of those that have come through already, Kalungu Naruhito Samandi. I don't know whether the Japanese have come to town. He says, good program. Fatim Mohammed says, okay, watching you. Dr. Kurugu, your constituents are watching us from Zabila. We also have Abdul Nashiru Mohammed, who says, the overview was comprehensive. A compelling case has been made for practical action over business as usual. I hope the politicians are listening. Business as usual, no more. This one says, to achieve SDG 6 and SDG 13, and this is where I'll end for now, we must involve community members, come out with action plans, allow the communities to pass their own sanitation bylaws, and set up sanitation and forestry committees. These were the things we implemented at Mauli Estate Community, and the community attained a status as the first urban community in Ghana with open defecation-free areas. And he actually ends with a phone number there with a link as well that we can check out. And I see one Prosper Makum coming back to say, this is true. I lived so close to that place in Ho, and I know the place. And even till now, I can still see your litter bins around. So if some communities can move forward and do this, why can't we replicate that on a national level? And even as we have this conversation, when we talk about sanitation, we are all involved. How about those of us who go around and you are littering everywhere? In fact, you see some people do the wrong thing and you tell them and they brush you off. You are the too knowing person who is trying to, sit on their happiness. But coming back to you, Dr. Kruger, we've spoken about a national adaptation plan. There is currently a review going on. The previous plan as we know it, did not prioritize the wash sector. Now, given the importance of wash-related issues, I want to find out, as head of the EPA, what can we learn about your current efforts to prioritize wash in the development of this new national adaptation plan? What role are you playing?
Thank you very much. I think the link between climate change and wash is very clear. We cannot, climate change causes drought, that causes water scarcity, and that affects sanitation. Climate change causes intense rainfall, that causes flooding. And anytime there is flooding, you need to think about the fact that nature has no break. So when you see in your television that the place is flooded, and those who do not have sanitation facilities at home, you ask yourself what is going on there. So clearly the link is there. And I think the EPA, as you rightly said, the plan is being reviewed. But one of the important steps that has been taken, and working closely with UNICEF and UNESCO also, is how to address some of the worries that were expressed here about institutional and behavioral changes. And you know that the EP has taken these steps to put this climate change education in the school curriculum, for example, because it's almost clear that with adults, it's very difficult to change attitude and behavior. But if we can start and catch them young, then people can imbibe with that attitude, because the basic problem is attitude. If your attitude is positive, you would perform the behavior. And so I think in the next few weeks, the minister responsible for environment and technology innovation would formally launch the climate change education program and hand the official copy to the Ghana Education Services. So that is also going to feature prominently in the revision work that is ongoing to make sure that we can put climate change education on the forefront. And that will inform how young people can imbibe the idea of water and sanitation and see how the connection with climate change will have an impact in the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me go now to Basilia. The Ministry for Local Government and Rural Development, for you, from where you sit, looking at their current functions, what they do, how does this discussion fit them? What more could they do when it comes to the practicality of the policies we keep talking about? From where you sit, the office you occupy, what more would you like to see from them? And is that where our focus should be, the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development? I know Farouk touched on that in different ways, but I want to take what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, so just like Farouk said, I think our MMDAs are under the ministry. And in as much as we have different sectors setting up different policies, everything is being implemented at the local level. And so when we talk about service delivery, it's at the local level and not at the national level, not at the ministries. Ministries are supposed to make policies and provide guidelines, but the real implementation is at the local level. And so for us as CSOs, let me just pick some of his words. If we want to see how much effort we are making in sanitation delivery, definitely we want to see it at the local level. But for us, we think that in as much as we have our water ministry making policies and the local government being in charge of local government delivery, the coordination should be strengthened. And let me borrow from him, it's not the issue about one ministry is not doing well or breaking up a ministry or so. Ministries are supposed to make policy and provide directions. And so for The Ministry of Sanitation, for instance, we have the water side doing very well. And why is that? Because it has the agencies that work all the way to the local level to provide service delivery. We have the water resources doing well. We have the Ghana Water providing water for urban. We have the community water and sanitation focusing on the rural and managing with the NGOs and private sector at the rural to provide water. Now, when we come to sanitation, when we get to the sanitation directorate, that is all. And that's why for the sector, we've always been saying that we need that linkage that the water has to the ground. That is the only way we can also ensure that there is effective delivery. We need some key connection between that ministry and the local level. We have the School of Hygiene, which is currently under the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. But when the students go out, they are under the local government ministry, because they work under the local government level. Now, for us, the Sanitation Authority is key to provide regulation, because currently you can't tell, okay, we are regulating sanitation. I don't see the practical documents on it. Maybe you go to an MMDA level and see maybe a bylaw or something. We need that overarching regulations. We need policy direct to break down the policy implementation. Something that will bridge, just like CWSA is bridging between district assemblies and the community in water delivery. We need that kind of bridge between our local government ministry and the sanitation to ensure that there is effective service delivery at the local level. So I think that the ministry is important, but the coordination role is where they need to be strengthened. And the NSA can really provide that strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Basilia. Matthias, you would hear Basilia talking about creating that bridge, that nexus, and coordination. From where you sit, looking at our structure, from the ministries down to the agencies, down to the the districts and all of that, do you feel it is too top-heavy? So from the top, instead of access trickling down all the way to the least units. What do you see?
I think from my standpoint, I cannot really say if it's too top-down or not, because I cannot, what should I compare it to, right? We cannot take a political framework in isolation. But I definitely agree a lot with Basilia that you have to recognize complexities. So if you do something, it has a lot of impact on a lot of other stuff, and that's the reason we need to see the water cycle holistically. You need to see climate and sustainability as holistic, and also have to mention that we cannot do more harm, because if you do more harm, then of course we make things work. But if you can make a positive impact, I think it will have a positive impact also on the institutional frameworks. And then I definitely agree that everyone can be better building bridges, not only within the ministries and agencies, it's also within the DPs, it's within the NGOs and so forth. Kuniwas is doing a good job in trying to build the bridges, but also the people out in the community, the outreach, and also not look at the water sector in isolation. We still need to learn from other sectors. Other sectors can learn from us. So having the multi-sided approach and recognize that, I think that's very important.
Thank you, Matthias. Let me come back to Farouk, and I'm coming back to the CSOs and others. As far as an institutional arrangement scenario is concerned, what is the sector's preferred arrangement? What would be the worst case scenario and the possible compromises to be made? I know that's a loaded one, but take your time and unpack it for us.
Worst case scenario, like I said, it's a no to split the water and sanitation functions. So that's a no. And
should we maintain a ministry for it?
That's another conversation, but it's a no to split the two. So we want the water, sanitation, and hygiene to remain intact. How you do that is an art of governance, and we need to get there. Okay. Now, why am I saying this? Again, it's important to appreciate why I'm saying what I'm saying. it's a historical conversation. There's a trajectory that we've come a long way. And gone are the days when, my brother, the kind of data you present in the global front, I work globally, and I meet politicians for Africa who just present data which is not real. And it is not the fault of the District Assembly or the political party or the civil servant. He has no data, and he's supposed to present the MDG report on slums, for example. I see my colleagues in those international seminars, and the kinds of data they present, you can tell this is very inaccurate. And so today, with the ministry that we have, we've gone very far in terms of ensuring that at least we are able to see through. There's let me call it a single spine approach to the data monitoring and data measurement, and then ensuring that the targeting is done in a certain way that is very, very formal. And I think that is something we are not ready to lose at all. I think we are together, right? Good. So it's something we are not ready to lose. Now, point two. My second point, as CSOs, I go for what I would term, and others have used the term, it's more like institutional pluralism. Institutional pluralism will mean that you identify the roles and who's best fit to do the role and responsibility, and then you allow them to perform. It doesn't matter whether it's Ministry A or Ministry B. So once you allow people to perform what they are best at, and then there's a coordination, and that's what the ministry does best. We needed somebody to defend our budgets in the Parliament of Ghana, for example. When I was doing this kind of work, sometimes I became so frustrated that we felt like an orphan, Basi. And so here we are, we want to present a case to government, and you need to set an agenda. Politics is about power, trade-offs, and you need to give and take. We didn't have one. You go to the Western Housing Ministry, and then they discuss water. There was a water directorate. I don't know, is it still there? It's moved to the ministry, right? There was a water directorate. The PURC handles one, Water Resource Commission, CWS, SA. These institutions are too many for us to handle. So we felt, and I was one of them, I used to check on us, we really wanted the ministry. We did. It was a need. We needed it. Now, 8 years down the line, it's also wise for us to do a review. Now, when we do the review on a very honest and real situations on the ground, not on political, ideological basis, and I insist. Once we do that, then we are able to tell that, look, this ministry is creating some level of, whether it's a parallel structure or we don't have the resources at the moment. So from where I sit, my question is, do we want to replicate the legs and the arms of the sanitation ministry into the districts? If no, the NSA, we've proposed that for quite some time now. How does the NSA help to support, to answer that question of the ministry performing on the ground? If we collectively feel that, and it's a cost and benefit analysis, please. This is not a conversation that you use grammar to hook somebody in. You need to provide science behind the conversation. And let's have this conversation, and I think we can get this rivaled. What we hate to see is when the two parties begin to play the game with this very important sector. It's our life. And we are saying clearly that when the politicians and the political elite, when I use the word, I use it wisely. This is a political elite. And so my understanding is that anytime the political elite wants to, for some reason, deny citizens the right to participate and drive their own lives, they centralize the whole issues. And I have a problem with recentralization, because my worry is that at the same time that we want to see the ministry running, what are the accountability mechanisms? At what stage who do you hold responsible? Who do you hold responsible when you have water issues? It shouldn't be the Ministry of Sanitation. It should be my local authority. So if I have problems of efficiency, problem of bad water, I should go to the assembly. How do we balance the coordination? How do you bring all of this to bear? If the NSA is what does it, so be it. If the ministry must go for more efficient ones, so be it. I think we are not politicians. We are advocates for WASH, and I would go for whatever solutions that allows a climate-resilient WASH to be done. And then it also allows the distribution of what I call authority, voice, and then access. Once you're able to distribute, well, voice is very important in all of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Farouk. I'll come to Basilia before I come back to Dr. Krugu. And I just want your assessment on this, the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area's Sanitation and Water Project. So far, what do you see to be the achievements under the Water and Sanitation Project over the period? And in terms of what costs may have been put forward, what we have expended on these projects, from where you sit, what do you think have been the achievements so far of that project?
Well, before I start, I will say that engineer was here to share with us some of the highlights of what the project has achieved. And now I will say that he did mention the number of...
And he will come in a bit.
Yes, he did mention the number of households that they've been able to reach. And I would say that has increased with the coverage from the period that they have come. Looking at Accra alone, it was very difficult to provide sanitation, especially choked areas like Choco and other places. But introducing that model, that simple sanitation model, the biodigester, helped every household to get access. So urban areas, the issue about access to toilets in urban areas was being solved. It has greatly reduced because now you can access it, and it is happening in the Greater Kumasi as well. And when the NDC gentleman was talking, he mentioned about sewage lines. I think the sanitation project was able to expand about 75-kilometer sewage line also at the Bankuma Ashama municipality, which will also be able to reach, engineers, about 40,000 households or so. Yes. So you can say that it's been able to achieve a lot. It's been able to increase access, especially to urban population, which was very difficult to assess because of the ways, the choked nature of the settlements. But I think that the project was able to break through that kind of situation to enable a lot of urban communities have access. It's now a household name in Ga and in Kumasi because people are able to really have access to toilets. Hitherto, you say you want to, you need space to get septic, and without a space, you cannot access toilet. Now, you don't need a septic tank, but you can access toilet. So I would say, in my opinion, it's really a great project and has benefited a lot of Ghanaians. And that's also increased on our access. Thank you.
Thank you, Basilia. Dr. Krugu, any reflections on that? That is if you have any before we move.
I can't speak of achievement of Garrett in that direction. But so I have two quick, Gamma.
The Gamma sanitation.
I have two quick interventions. One of them is what Farouk speaks about, institutional pluralism, and the simple fact of identifying roles and making people perform them. In practice, this normally works until resources comes in. What I see is the tussle over the control of resources, and that is where these roles become an issue. And so I think that is an area to look at. When we set up these agencies and authorities and all of that, we need to also make sure that they have the resources to be able to perform. The other thing has to do with data. I think both of you has made reference to data. I think we also need to look at the local governance system, the municipal assembly or district assembly. When you walk in there, which office is paying attention to data? You know, the example I gave earlier on, if you do not even know how many people are living within a particular jurisdiction, you just have a problem from day one. Because it means that you also have no idea what solid or liquid waste is being generated and where is that going to. And so data, we also need to look at it at the local governance level and see how to strengthen that. My last intervention is to supply information. I listened to Courage make a proposal that if the movement for change wins power, they would transform the EPA into an authority. Just for us to lift the debate, one of the reasons why the majority leader appealed to the Speaker to reconvene Parliament is to be able to pass the EPA bill into law. And we are hoping that when they come back in the first week of September, we'll be able to get that law passed. So you can focus on the implementation of that law in 2025. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for these thoughts. Now, moving the conversation forward, and I'll be coming to you as well, the political parties. We'll hear from Kwabena Japong on a number of matters. But I just want to find out, what then is the next step? As we sit here this evening, what is the most critical step we need to take? What would be your recommendations, your takeaways that we have to keep in mind as we get ready to wrap up on this conversation? I'll start with Matthias on this one.
Yes, okay. I think from my side is that everyone looks into your organizations and within the public sector, within the NGOs and so forth, and look at all the people, the young and the older ones with a drive, and embrace that drive to move forward, because I think that's where innovation is happening. I know there's a lot of good initiative. Ghana Water, for instance, are gathering all young water professionals right now and trying to work towards being more innovative in their approaches and so forth. And I do think by embracing the drive within organizations, very important, because I think to move ahead, it has to be people-driven. So I think that's my thoughts on this.
It must be people-driven, definitely. Basilia?
Okay, so I would say, and I'll repeat what my big brother has been saying, do not separate.
Which one of them is your big brother? Farouk?
Farouk. He was my chairman some few years back. Do not separate water, sanitation, and hygiene, no matter what you do. But I feel that the MSWR, if political parties feel it's not working well, it could be rebranded to work the way it is. It's not an issue about scrubbing off ministries, but rebrand it and make it work and look at the critical issues it's supposed to achieve. The important thing is governance. If the right governance is in place, it will work well. And do not forget the National Sanitation Authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Farouk, what would you like to leave us with? Dr. Kruger, I'll come to you last.
To be blunt on the conversation, I want just to repeat that it's a local governance crisis. The climate conversation, the water sanitation.
It's a local governance crisis.
It's a local governance crisis. Yeah, the kind of challenges we're facing on most of the fronts are an issue of governance. And so if we can look at the governance, because governance is also about resource prioritization, and the commitments will come and the resources are not following through. You do the medium-term sector plans. Sometimes I cry for the ministries. They do a 4-year medium-term plans. At the end of the 4th year, they have 10% achievement because the money they wasn't released for them to implement. So I think let's all come together and agree that water and sanitation and hygiene is life, and we are going to prioritize and work together to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kruger.
Thank you so much. I think I agree with Farouk on the question of governance. And this is so good that here is political parties engaging in this forum. 3 reasons why we need government is to have a state, to maintain law and order, and to keep the people safe. And keeping the people safe is central to, water and sanitation and climate. The combined impact is critical to keeping the people safe. So I hope that all of us as stakeholders, you ask for the way forward, that between now and December 7th, we can focus the conversation from a national perspective, not a political party competition, but from a national perspective on how we are going to, and the EPA is busy working on several adaptation plans, look at how we can tackle the impact of climate change on the water sector head on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together for our panel members. Farouk, Dr. Krugu, Basilia, Matthias, it's been really insightful sitting here with all of you. But let's hear from some of you here gathered. I'll start with Engineer Kwabena J, and then we would like to hear from the political parties as well. We've spoken about the Sanitation and Water Resources Ministry. Should the NDC come to power, what are you going to do? Should the MPP come to power, Dr. Kokofu, what are you going to do? Courage Nobi, should the Alliance for Revolutionary Change come to power, what is Alan going to do? I'll be coming to you shortly on that. But I'll start with Engineer Kwabena J.
Thank you very much. And I want to make it very clear. I'm passionate about WASH. I'm a WASH professional. That's why I'm here. I didn't come here. It just happens that I'm the chairman of the MPP Manifesto Committee on Housing and Public Infrastructure.
Okay.
And which brings me to the fact that maybe I should put the organizers on the spot. The panel discussion we've had is very useful. And these are the things that the political parties should learn from. So that should have been the beginning of this dialogue, first and foremost, so that we can learn from your experiences as political parties. And as Dr. Kokofu said, we will launch our manifesto on Sunday. So I don't want to take a leave or out of it or anything and discuss what we are likely to put out. But after that, we can have a discussion. What is important is that when you take in water, eventually you have to release it as waste. I remember when we were in graduate school doing environmental engineering, there's the clean side and there's the dirty side. So there can never be a separation of water and sanitation and hygiene. It goes together. I am very radical in my thinking. I believe in lean government, and I've said this before. I never understood why the ministry should be a standalone. It doesn't mean that the focus that it should get, or water and what should get, should only happen when it's a ministry. If I was the president, you have Ministry of Public Works, and water and sanitation will be with Works and Housing as one. I can't say that. I don't know whether Dr. Baumia would do that or not, but I know he's going.
So you are not for a standalone,
No, I'm not.
Sanitation and Water Resources Ministry.
Many railways and aviation should all be transport. It should be transport. Chieftaincy, tourism, culture should be one. It shouldn't be standalone. Those are my personal views. I've channeled it through the sources that it should be channeled through. So whether that carries the day is another matter.
Right.
But it's important that in Ghana, and again, you, the media, sometimes, you over-politicize issues. This issue of a national dialogue for WASH. And I want to piggyback on Ibrahim's institutional framework. That is what we should have been discussing today. That thing. All of us. Taking away our political lenses and see what works for this country. You understand? So I think it's very important that we recognize that we have a country. I don't know how we have moved from 110 district assemblies to 261. Because at the end of the day, has it brought with it commensurate improvement in the delivery of services at the localities? Has it? So we've just loaded the financial pressure on us just running 261 district assemblies. Because if you have to buy 110 four-wheel drives, you are now buying 261. When I was executive director at the Ghana Institution of Engineering, I did an audit of the 260 MDAs to find out their works departments, whether they have registered engineers. Only about 18 had professionally registered engineers with the Ghana Institution of Engineering. So we're talking about capacity. And then also turf wars. The reason why sometimes I have some uneasiness with a talk about climate. Not that I don't believe that climate change. I serve on the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, the Committee on Climate Change, which is being hosted by the UK ICE. But I think in Ghana we need to get our basics right. Our basics right. The way we live is not good. When you say it that way, people misconstrue that to mean you are arrogant. But that is not the way we live. Human beings should live. It means there's something wrong with our human settlement planning. And we love changing names. It used to be town and country planning, and everybody knew what it meant. Today it is loose pap, a mouthful. Most people don't even understand what it is. You know, so we have serious issues to deal with as Ghanaians. And I think that maybe the next time we have this dialogue, let's concentrate more on those institutional issues that we are struggling with. And the political parties have to come and learn from the experts, and so that they can use that and get it embedded in their manifestos. Because of time, I don't want to say too much, but when you have more time to discuss WASH, I'm always there. I'm an advocate for WASH, and without that, you know, environmental health, sustainability, resilience, those are all nice, sexy words, but the practical thing is achieving service delivery at the local level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to fling the potato back at you, hot as it is. One of these days we're going to invite you, call on you, and then we can have more time. Is that a yes I get? Okay. All right. So we want to hear briefly, because of time, because of the passage of time, we want to hear from the political parties. I'll come to you as well. And Dr. Kokofu, would you like to take, Dr. Kokofu, would you like to take the first turn, or should I go and come back to you? I should go and come back to you. Yeah, all right. Courage, let's start with you.
Thank you very much.
Please make it straight to the point.
So again, I go to the Great Transformational Plan, well documented of the intentions of the movement for change. And if you have a copy, page 40 and 41 talks about public sector reforms, where we promise to run this country with 40 ministers. 40 ministers. I won't run through all, but where it concerns this discussion is infrastructure. And under infrastructure, you have transport, that's roads, highways, aviation, railway, public transit systems, and ports and harbors. Then you have communication and digitalization, also under infrastructure. Then you have public housing, water systems, sanitation, waste management, and sewage systems. And each of these three would have a Minister of State responsible for it, working with under the broad ministry infrastructure. So this is the arrangement that the Movement for Change has. So again, you would see that concerning public housing, water systems, sanitation, waste management, and sewage, it's already viewed as one. That is what the Movement for Change, the arrangement that we have in place. So I think that the good old Kobne Japan, you are welcome to the Movement for Change, since your ideas are very well established here. But last but not least is the issue of the governance. I think the failure of local governance is at the bedrock again of most of these issues. So, for example, I will take on my brother, Dr. Tukono. If the Ministry for Local Government sits in Accra and procures dustbins at the ministry and only goes to distribute it at the local level without empowering the local level to prioritize and plan on its own means of sanitation, then you create a problem. So this is not wrong assumption, because this is what the NDC did previously. It's a similar thing that the MPP has been doing. Everything is centralized. Very little or no decentralization. So meaningful decentralization, capacity building at the local level for them to know how to plan their environment, how to plan their water resources, how to plan their waste management and the likes, is where the solution lies. And to that end, the Movement for Change would ensure the election, not on partisan basis, of MMDCs, so that development is controlled at the local level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, yes, sir. Please give him the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Tony Obin. First of all, I think that we have not been able to draw attention to the fact that WASH is not a cost, because generally we think, governments think WASH is a cost. WASH is an investment. There are a lot of studies that have established that when you invest properly into WASH, you tend to have positive impact on economic growth. In fact, it is said that if you invest $1, you get back in WASH, properly so-called, then you get about $7 back. So WASH is not just a cost thing, but it's an investment which government will reap something when they do so. And finally, I want to just support what my brother Kwabena just said. Sometimes you bring people here as politicians, as parties, and then you say, oh, don't talk about parties and on their political. They will do it. They will always do it because that's a trade. You see, so don't take that out of them. Let's focus on the institutional issues, the challenges, what you have seen, and what they can learn and take home. They are always going to take the decision as politicians. And then finally, gender. We haven't mentioned gender in our discussion, but studies have also shown that if WASH was implemented properly, in fact, women are disproportionately positively impacted. So we should think about all these things when we are looking at WASH. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otukuno. Let's hear from you. And let's also hear what a future NDC government, if you get the nod of the people of Ghana, will do. Are you going to scrap the ministry like the former president has suggested for cost reasons and others? What will you do?
Okay, so maybe I want to be on my feet. But before I do that, I came with Professor Nanama Brown-Kluche. She's part of the WASH team working on the NDC manifesto. She's part of the subcommittee. And Dr. Tony Obin, you know him very well, former CEO for Minerals Commission, also working with us on the subcommittee on natural resources, WASH, and so on. And so they are all here with us. Dr. Abdullahi Dramani was here earlier. He left. Let me seek to address your question, perhaps from this angle. So I think our problem as a country is that most of the times we find a solution and go and look for the problem to align to the solution. And that is why we are here having this discussion about whether we should collapse sanitation ministry and all those things. And sometimes we get politically emotional and we make promises that are grounded on nothing. And I think that we have come to a point where we cannot play with decision making and making emotional decisions and, just talking around the words and all that. Data, science and data, cost and benefit should drive public policy formulation. And that is why President Mahama is talking about collapsing the Ministry of Sanitation. There is a reason. Now, before the advent of the Ministry of Sanitation and Water, we were handling sanitation under the local government system. So history has it, how we had progressed, how we had managed, sanitation under local government. Water was with housing. So we want to find a solution, bring WASH together. We all agree. Now we are on the same page that let water, sanitation, and hygiene go together. But how do we do it efficiently so that we can rip up the interest from the investments that we make in WASH? And we believe that the best way to do that, to have real value for our money, would be to put WASH under a local government system. And so we have proposed that sanitation and water should go back to the local government system, where the people directly feel the impact of the policy decisions in WASH, and we are able to hold authorities accountable. Some would argue that what about the environment angle and the climate change angle? That is all important. But it is not only climate change that is important for WASH. As rightly mentioned, gender is also important. And they are all inclinations, including health. And so if you are going to just be realigning because there are some relations with, some other sectors of the country, then you would always be realigning the ministries. But we believe that putting weight and premium, or even prioritizing the implementation processes and looking at the efficiency pitfalls, the best way to handle WASH policy, formulation, implementation, planning is through the local government system. Because again, through the local government system, you are able to assess the differential characteristics of the various areas as regards climate and all those things. And you're able to make the better decision. So that's our proposal in that direction. Then maybe finally, before I sit down, I see you doing this. Because you see, this matter is very broad. And so sometimes when you get the mic, you may want to overtalk. But finally, I believe that the issues of WASH, as much as we mainstream, we must make sure that all stakeholders, both civil society and other stakeholders all involved, come to some level of consensus. We shouldn't fall for the trap of alienating the politician. Because look, you cannot have this discussion and implement the policies by a civil society organization or DPs. You can only do that with the politicians. When all is said and done, it comes to the table of the politician. And so the politician plays a very critical role. Sometimes we are very quick to say, oh, we leave the politician out. If you bring me and you bring Kokofu, we would compare records because we are politicians. And particularly in an election year, we must check track records. There is a saying in Akan that the one who has chewed dondo, dondo, when he says he will chew the stick you used to play the dondo, you don't doubt him.
Thank you.
You understand? And so that is why when you bring politicians to discuss these things, it's important. But don't run away from comparing records, because we will compare every time you bring us together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know who is chewing the dondo and who is chewing the stick, but interesting thoughts from Courage, Dr. Obin, Dr. Tokuno. Yes, let's hear you. Then we'll hear Dr. Kokofu, and then just two more. This gentleman and okay, so the other two. There will be three more. We have to speed this up. We have to speed this up. Please, let's hear you. Please, let's try and manage.
Yeah, just
30
a
seconds.
quick one. So my name is Professor Nanama Brown-Klute. I also hold the position of the Vice Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and I serve on the Manifesto Committee for the NDC. So just a quick one on running a lean government. That is what John Mahama had said, if you remember, that he's going to run a 60 Ministry of Government. And that is to help decentralize the governance of Ghana. Okay. So this is just to help, and again, with what Otukuno had said, we are very particular about WASH. So we have a committee in the NDC manifesto specifically on WASH, looking at all the integrated aspect of WASH. So that's just to add to the
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Kokofu. Please, can we get the microphone to Dr. Kokofu very quickly? And from there, we'll move from the political parties, do three of these participants, and we can call it a wrap with the recommendations.
Thank you very much.
That we shall give.
I must say that on Sunday, the New Patriotic Party will launch the manifesto. The flag bearer of the party and the leader will advance most of the achievement chalked so far. Investments over $2 billion in this environmental sector, and then also proceed to tell the nation what we have in stock. As for Doc, my colleague Doc, yes, achievements we will compare, but forum inconvenient as of today, because you may be talking from the Phantom Green Book. I may be asking people to look at the performance tracker but that is not is necessary here. that is not what is necessary here. Here we have come here to learn and listen. And I must say that we at New Patriotic Party do appreciate the effort of the various stakeholders, particularly CSOs, our development partners, and the general citizenry, engineer you and your group and all that, the professional bodies and all that. So for take home, I must say that Water Aid Ghana and Ghana Youth Environment Movement, your joint position paper on water sanitation and hygiene, WASH, based climate adaptation strategy is quite a very instructive. And we will take time, we've already taken time to analyze and then to look at it. Right. It is very useful. Right. Also, you asked for National Sanitation Authority. Well, that is quite looking at. We at New Patriotic Party will take into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kokofu. So we shall take these three, and that will be it in respect of. Please make it brief. Brief, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Richard Fiadumo, President of the Chamber for Local Governance. I think the participants have said it. It's our issues about governance and priority.
Okay, so what you've been watching is the Joy News National Dialogue on WASH and climate change, and I'm sure that you've learnt a lot. There's a lot to come out of this particular dialogue in our bulletins. So do stay tuned for more. You can log on to My Joy Online for more of the details coming out of this national dialogue.